We are here in Worcester, Massachusetts with Mr. Casey Sherman, a well-known writer and also a young man who has put together several books, some of which are what, soon to be made into a movie?
One is soon to be made into a movie called Bad Blood, which I wrote last year. It's a 2009 bestseller. Landed my first movie deal, and I've got 4 other best-selling books. And the art of selling, writing books and selling them are 2 completely different things. I tell people that all the time that, okay, it's one thing to write the book, but then you have to market it and sell it. Take off your Hemingway hat, put on your P.T. Barnum hat, and move that product.
And that's where the second part of the personality comes in, because you're your artist when you're your writer, but then you have to switch that off and become a business person, right?
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of the writers don't understand that you need both, parallel revenue streams or avenues, so to speak, to make it for a successful book.
Tell us a little bit about your background, because you didn't come out of the traditional writing thing, but spent time in another medium.
Right. Well, I was a television producer for CBS News for almost 20 years. I also write for magazines, newspapers. Call me the accidental author, so to speak. My first book was based on my reinvestigation of the Boston Strangler case, which was a personal crusade for me because my aunt was the last victim in the case.
And that was a good 40 or 50 years ago.
That was in 1964.
Okay.
Going on the 50th anniversary coming up in a few years, yes.
Yep. We had a drive-in theater back then, and I remember changing the marquee for the Boston Strangler when the movie came out.
Well, that's the first time I really understood what the case was about. I grew up in an Irish Catholic household. Things like that were never talked about in my family. I saw the Boston Strangler film with Tony Curtis, Henry Fonda. I thought I understood what the case was until I really reinvestigated it and found out it was completely different.
And when you do investigative reporting, you kind of put yourself at peril. Is that correct?
Unfortunately, that's kind of part of the job. You try to make educated and smart decisions about the people you're going to interview, but sometimes you really need this certain person's viewpoint on a story, no matter how dangerous it may be. But again, you take calculated risks. You don't try to put yourself completely out there in danger.
Right. I know my wife has read many of the books about life in South Boston with various people there, and I heard you mention Kevin Weeks before, and evidently that's usually considered one of the more credible books about life in South Boston with certain people.
Oh, well, right. I mean, I know Kevin Weeks. I'm the only person who can say that he's met Whitey Bulger and the real Boston Strangler. I met Whitey Bulger in the early 1990s. I was living in South Boston as a college student before Whitey Bulger took off, and before before the bodies were dug up and unearthed, and you saw really what kind of sick, evil person this guy was.
You said you've met the real Boston Strangler. You're not referring to Albert DeSalvo, are you?
No, I proved that Albert DeSalvo was not the real Boston Strangler through DNA evidence and through a mountain of other evidence. The actual Strangler there wasn't just one strangler. There were several men committing these crimes against women, and the police knew it at the time.
The copycat crimes?
Copycat crimes. If you hated a woman in the early 1960s and wanted to kill her, you had a blueprint for how to commit a Boston Strangler murder.
And get away with it.
Well, get away with it. But the thing is, the police, they were smarter than that. They had suspects in these cases, and they were told to put all their suspects away when a mentally incompetent man named Albert DeSalvo confessed to not just one murder, but all of the murders.
Let me ask you this question, because we need to segue a little bit off that particular story and talking to other writers. How hard is it for you to sit down, either with a laptop or the old Royal typewriter or the IBM Selectric, and crank out material?
Oh, well, my training as a journalist makes it easy, and for me anyways, to crank out the material, but I love to write. If you don't love to write, then you shouldn't write. The best part of the whole project is sitting down at your computer and being creative, whether you're writing a fictional novel or a true crime thriller. The goal is to tell a story. And if you're a good storyteller, your success will come.
Now, the issue of self-publishing that is prominent today, but probably wasn't prominent at least 10, 5, even 3, 4 years ago. there are so many more avenues to get your product out there today, is there not?
Oh, absolutely. And I think self-publishing is a great way to go for young writers. The production quality for certain self-publishing companies is very good. But the onus is on the writer to make that book successful. But I've self-published. I've also published with the biggest publishing houses in the world, and it's always the writer's duty to get your book noticed.
Right. And I mean, you drove out here to Worcester, 50 miles from Boston, not at a convenient time of night.
Right.
So you're here.
I've spoken to audiences of 5,000 people. I've spoken to audiences of 5.
And you never know who's going to be in that audience.
Yeah. Because if you get one person hooked on your work, they'll buy your other books as well.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. People think that, if I self-publish, I've got to do all the work, but if I get a major house to do it, then they're going to take care of all my promotion.
That's a myth.
Big myth, right?
Oh, big myth. I mean, the major houses don't even know how to promote books.
Why do you say that?
Because I've dealt with full PR wings from some of the biggest publishing houses, and again, they think that by sending out a press release for your book, you're going to get noticed. And it's laughable. It's about building relationships within the media and leveraging those relationships to get your book noticed. And you really have to train yourself to be a good interview. If you don't care about your book, and if you can't articulate the synopsis of your book very quickly, then the reader won't as well.
One thing I noticed when you were on with Upton earlier on the radio is if he asks you a question, you're not giving one-word answers. You're not giving yes or no's or maybes.
Right. You have to be able to tell a story. The yes or no answers are no good when you really have to be a storyteller. A lot of writers are introverted. They communicate on the page, but you have to take yourself out of your computer, out of your typewriter, and become the vocal performer for your work. It's not not lecturing. You're a performance artist. You have to sell your work person to person.
So you really are the exception to the rule. Number one, you had relationships already established because of your work in the TV world. And secondly, you seem to like being interviewed.
Oh, well, it's the only time I get to talk directly to the readers, which is great. I love to interact with people, and if they like my work, there's no greater compliment for me. I don't do this for the money. You're not in the writing world to get rich. You're in the writing world to affect lives, to tell stories that you think should be told.
Tell us a couple of your titles so that our viewers can either go online and get them or
all
go to
of
their
my
local.
titles are available online and in all the major bookstores. The Finest Hours, Bad Blood, A Rose for Mary, The Hunt for the Real Boston Strangler, Black Irish, and Black Dragon.
How about a website? You have a website of your own?
I do. It's actually I've found out that Facebook is more important and more effective than having my own website, because that's where the world lives now, and that's how you really reach out to so many readers.
You have a Facebook business page?
Yes, it's just Facebook Casey Sherman, and that's where you'll find all my titles, and that's where you can correspond with me directly.
And they can click on Be a Fan.
Absolutely.
Become a fan.
Become a fan, and
that's that.
Shoot me emails, questions about writing. I'm always happy to help.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, John.
Have a great day.
You too.